Hi everyone, welcome back. This is our second week of workshops on fact-checking. We've covered the basics last week with an intro to the mis and disinformation landscape, giving all of you, and including myself, an overview of what is mis and disinformation and how it looks like. And so the steps we need to take before deciding on verifying a content and what are basic checks we need to do. All of these enable us to be better equipped to identify and later decide if it's worth verifying content on the internet. So now we've also talked about reverse image search and how that helps us debunk visuals that are floating on the internet, if those images have been recycled, or if we want to obtain more clues to verify the content itself. Now, that was what we covered last week. If you missed the sessions last week, do not worry. You can go back to the playlist and you can actually view the recording of the last two sessions. We'll provide the link to those playlists shortly. And so today we'll look at how to search for information smartly. Working smart, right? Basically, there is no one tool. We get asked all the time, right? Is there a program or a tool that once you insert the information, be it a WhatsApp message or a photo or a video, and then out the program churns out the answer and tells you whether it's true or false? Now, there is no such program or tool, does not exist in this world. All the fact checkers we are out there right now, they have to use their creativity and with whatever available tools that there are there right now to basically utilize and work smartly in order to find information that they need. So today we'll touch on some of these, what are the EQ skills that you need to spot out details in the content that you have in order to verify them. We'll also look at search operators or advanced search on some of the platforms available and how to make the best use of these tools. First off, we had a simple exercise last week, and I was wondering, how did you do? Did you manage to find the answer for these three different headlines? So we asked you if these three headlines are true or false. The first one says LeBron James, which is a very famous basketball player, he's going to be a star player for baseball's Boston Red Sox, and his quote here apparently in headline says, "I'm going to do what Michael Jordan couldn't," and it looks like it's from a very legit and news website. And this looks like it's from a screen capture from Twitter, from the Twitter account of the International Space Station. And it says here the object at lower left, just above the horizon, was moving at high speed in a clearly controlled manner. Extraterrestrial visitors coming to play. So, and the third headline, it's based on Kim Kardashian. Basically, Kim Kardashian calls on the US to urge Turkey to stop sending arms and fighters to Azerbaijan. Now, if you manage to find the time to quickly, do a search to see whether any of these three headlines are true or false, you will be able to find that, well, the first two stories are untrue. The third, although it sounds rather bizarre because, what is a reality TV star, dabbling with political issues, right? Kim Kardashian actually, the third one is true because Kim Kardashian has an Armenian background. And so she was interested in the whole fighting that was happening between Azerbaijan and Armenia. So there are different ways that this could have been solved. You could, do a straightforward Google search. And that would have, sufficed for the first and third headline. For the second one, which is a tweet, right? You could actually have gone to the International Space Station's Twitter account and scrolled down to the or search to get down to the dating question on the Twitter account, on the Twitter post, and you can then see that the tweet with that same photo, but it has a completely different text. So the text has been manipulated in this case. Now, of course, there's also this other concern, which a lot of people, I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but there are a lot of people out there, including influential people, who would like to, easily blame photos or videos that are circulating on the internet as deepfakes. Now, it's also very tempting for us as fact checkers to want to be able to confirm or debunk things directly, right? But we know that, sometimes with technology right now that, what we see may not just be enough. And there are computer generated photographs right now that done by AI. So and they look like real actual human beings, right? So this is what we call deep fake. But so it's important to be aware that deepfakes exist. But by and large, the bulk of the mis and disinformation out there that are circulating on your social messaging apps, on your social media platforms, on the internet in general, the by and large of it, the bulk of it all are not comprising of deepfakes, right? And so the big key thing here to remember is that we do not have. I mean, deepfake is a concern, but we do not have to be overly worried about them. And what remains even more important in our work as fact checkers is that we need to be able to find context and corroboration in the information that we have before we can verify them. And I think this has to be a reminder to ourselves that context and corroboration remains key. And so, we see that with the advent of social media and social messaging apps that it's becoming a very visual environment on the internet. And so we see there's also a lot of visual-based sites like, say, YouTube, on Twitter, Facebook. But we have to remember that, no matter what, the internet does work in a certain manner, which is everything is indexed and organized, right? So we just need to figure out how it's indexed and organized and be able to search smartly. So like I said, effective search practices are crucial. And so then here's a basic workflow that, you could basically jot down, or if you're watching a recording, you could also still jot down or take a screenshot, just this, of what the workflow should be. And we'll explain through how we will go through each step of the workflow after this. But basically, it starts from, brainstorming, and then we test our keywords, and then we try to refine and iterate it, and then we deploy. And if it doesn't work, we go back to refining and iterating it. Now, how does this actually work? First off, if you're working in a newsroom, obviously you would, want to work together with your colleagues because, a few brains is always better than one, right? So basically what you can do is that when you're working on a story or an incident, you can do a brainstorming as a group. And there's no need to spend a lot of time on this. You just need to brainstorm very quickly. What are the most obvious search terms? You could have some in mind, but maybe you missed out a few keywords that your colleagues could help you out by chipping in. And then this would obviously, when you have some obvious search terms that you want to search to verify content, you will see that these search terms would lead on to other search terms. And so what then makes a good search term? So you have to remember that, there are a few things that these are the common ones that we list out, right? Basically, it can be very specific, if you're talking about event or incident, like a fire, flood, shooting, a protest, or it could be like a variety, basically if you're talking about how do we vary certain words like flood, you can also use flooding or flooded, right? What are the alternative words for protest? It could be riots, it could be demonstration. So location names are also important, like the location of the street or the square or a building name. It could also be an abbreviation or acronym that we want to look out for. Maybe that it's a particular group that's organizing an event, and we want to take that group's name or abbreviation of it. Or we could also look at common misspellings, right? Like lightning could be spelled as lightning with an E. And also, you need to think about like how in local contexts, I noticed especially in Asia, in local contexts, we can get a lot of common misspellings for cities and street names and building names. Especially, I noticed this happens quite a lot in places like Malaysia and Indonesia. So you could try to put yourself in the mind of someone posting this content or information, right? So anticipate what are the words that they would use to go together with the visual that they have. So, and remember there are different ways that you could refer to the same thing, which is why I said that you could use the word flood, flooding, flooded, protest, demonstration, or riot, right? If I'm going too fast, you can actually tell me and I'll try to slow down because we have a lot to cover today. So I'm hoping we can finish this within 1 hour. So what makes a good search term? If we're searching on social media, especially Twitter, there's this tendency that when we search up stuff on Twitter, we will also include the hashtags. Actually, that's not necessary because by just searching the phrase Me Too or Black Lives Matter, you would get results of on Twitter with and without the hashtag included in the tweet. And so, of course, we also try not to have too broad of a search term. Like, instead of using the word Monas, which is the national monument in Jakarta, rather than using the word Jakarta, we'll use the word Monas, which scopes down to exact location of the area within Jakarta itself, rather than looking at the entire city. So, and then we also try to look up names if it's particularly an unusual name, like not a very common name, and we also try to look out for local slang and jargon. And if we are covering, of course, in Asia, there are many different languages. So, we also would be very immensely helpful to use a local language in your search, especially when you're searching social media. It might be necessary to include search terms in other languages, and the reasons for this because we're looking at local context, and especially if a location whereby, especially in countries like, say, for example, Malaysia, would use it's a multiracial country, so it would use different languages. So you could then start using Malay, Bahasa Melayu, or you could also start using Mandarin in your search, in order to get different search results might then yield the answer that you're looking for. So, and a piece of content that you're trying to verify or debunk, right, may also have been copied from a source using a different language. So, knowing search terms in different languages could be key to discovering the original content that we're trying to look for. So then the next step that we want to take is to test out the search terms, right? So then we would then add these search terms, check if they're actually, useful in different platforms. The quickest way to do this is to do a simple, quick search on Twitter or Facebook. If a term that is not being used there, then, probably that, okay, this keyword is not very helpful. You have to move on and try a different keyword. And also, like, trying out, like I said, keywords in local languages that would also might be helpful. Then once we get the results, we try to refine and iterate. So when search terms prove effective, then we try to go through the post, scroll through any video captions to see if there are any unusual or specific terms that are being used besides the keywords that you already input. So we try to test more keywords and see how effective they are, and if they are helpful, then we can then add them to the list of keywords that we would use to narrow down content for the particular information that we have that we want to verify. So when you get results, you could then check for other terms being used in social media posts, local news reports, and video captions. Now, so one tool that can be helpful, and this two tools actually that can be helpful is TWX Explorer and Word Counter. Now, TWX Explorer is useful for Twitter only. I will post a link here in the comment section, so you can have you can save it and bookmark it later. So what it does is that it finds terms and hashtags that are being tweeted in connection with each other. So say, for example, you have this keywords that you have for Twitter that you're looking for. This, for example, is Jakarta, and then you would also look at omnibus law or like / protest or / demonstration, right? So these are the keywords that you have. But then when you put it into TWX Explorer, they might show you what other common keywords that are also used on Twitter by other people who are tweeting the similar event that you're covering, which is the omnibus law protests. So then you can then look at those keywords, and if they might bring you to more content that you can then add them into your search keywords, that phrases that that basically this whole tab of document that you will keep all the keywords that you want to like mine for information. So Word Counter would find the most used words in a piece of text, right? This can be useful for quick analysis of local news reports or Facebook posts, especially long Facebook posts. And I will also post the link to word counter here on the comment section. And of course, don't forget that, with every platform, there are also filters for date and time. And this can be especially useful if you were to debunk or verify content. So for example, there are often, whenever there's a flooding or a typhoon or basically any natural disaster that I can think of, maybe an earthquake or a volcanic eruption, you will see the same photos circulating over and over again. So when someone shares a say on WhatsApp this photo and they tell you that this is the latest flooding incident in the state of Kelantan in Malaysia, and how would you know that this photo is exactly taken recently, or it could have been recycled from a flooding incident in Kelantan, say 4 years ago, because the state experiences flooding annually. So then what you would do is you would want to perhaps you want to use reverse image search, which we spoke about last week, but we also will want to then use date and time filters to make sure that the photo did not appear before this week, for example. But you could also, if you were also looking for content and you don't have any visuals with you that you're trying to debunk, you could also look at date and time filters if you were to look at what are the things that have been reported or posted on social media previously with regards to a certain event. So you just say, I want to look at what was floating on the internet on social media platforms during the protests for Omnibus Law last year. I would then use a date and time filter so that I could go back in time and look at the content that was surfacing on the internet then. So this is how you get onto date and time filter on YouTube. You just need to click on the filter and then you will see an upload date. There you go. Then you can actually easily narrow down and look at content and also verify and debunk them if you have a piece of content. So next step is to deploy, right? So then we want to create searches using multiple browser tabs or tools designed for monitoring, such as TweetDeck, which works very well for Twitter. And we'll also use search operators to combine different search terms, keywords, and we'll maybe create alternative keywords, or mix and match keywords. And we'll also use it to block negative terms that are mid-terms that we don't want. And also we'll be able to use search terms to stay alert for the emergence of new keywords and hashtags and continue to refine and iterate the keywords that we have. Of course, if you discover new and useful terms, you want to ask, if you're working in a newsroom, you want to then inform your colleagues, who are also working on a similar story. And if more than one person is involved in the team covering the same thing, it might be worth dividing sets of keywords in order to monitor them. So it's not just on you to monitor, say, 20 to 30 different keywords on the internet. So it's also helpful to create a spreadsheet or a document that you would store all these useful keywords that are related to a particular incident, so that whenever another similar incident occurs, then you already know what are the most common keywords that will be used. I think in the case of Asia, it would be useful to create, say, a document of keywords covering natural disasters like flooding, earthquake, volcanic eruption, typhoon, and even events of social movements that are happening in a lot of countries right now, say protests, demonstration, or riots. And in some countries right now where governments are looking at, say, crackdown or clampdown on the internet and also on misinformation laws or fake news laws, then you can create also a similar spreadsheet or a document that would be tied to these keywords. So now we'll look at search engine and their search operators, because we know that search engines have an organized data of content, right? And there are lots of it on the internet. So knowing how to use them effectively would give us an edge, especially when we're doing our work as journalists and fact checkers. First, we'll look at Google operators, not because we're part of Google News Initiative, but because Google has the widest and largest database of information because so many people use it, right? So knowing how to use search operators effectively can be very, very helpful in order to narrow down information and content. So you have to be very clear and remember and develop this habit that for every search operator, we use a double dot, and then we put in the keyword and make sure that there are no spaces in between. And we say this, remind us habitually, because there are a lot of people after attending the workshop, they say that, we tried using search operators, Google search operators didn't work. And most of them because they put in a space in between. So, I mean, it's very natural, instinctive that when we type, we like to put a space in between words. But just remember, for this to work, you need to not have spaces. So first search operator that we can use on Google is to eliminate content that we don't want by using the minus sign. So for this example, we're using the word bears. So maybe for those those of us in Asia, will naturally think of, yes, bear, the animal, right? But there is also a American football team that calls themselves Chicago Bears. So when you key in bears on Google search, you might wind up with Chicago Bears as the result. Now, we don't want Chicago Bears. We have no interest in Asia towards Chicago Bears. So we could actually then search bears minus Chicago, and then we would get only the animal bears. And of course, the other helpful search operator is to use whenever we want to search a website or a domain by using the cite double dot function. And cite double dot function is incredibly helpful for you to find information. Now, I used to do this when I was a journalist by looking up content on government sites and on also news websites. So how you utilize this is, first off, when I go for a press conference, for example, I would need to then write up a background to the story. Now, I wouldn't want to waste time by doing that after the fact, right? So I would spend the time while waiting to actually prepare the background of the story. Now, what we usually do as reporters is that we'll naturally just Google up some keywords that we think are relevant to the story that we're covering, and then we just try to scroll and look for the story that we want and then get the background. Now, have you ever thought that using cite double dot and then the news website link, say for example, if you're based out of Indonesia, then you would use cite double dot tempo.id if you want to look for articles from Tempo website. So then you would then only get results from that particular website itself. So now what I would do is I would use cite double dot, the website link, and then I will put in my keyword as well. So I will get all results from that particular news site with that keyword. I also use it to find information from government websites, because a lot of times we find that government websites are not exactly the most friendly and user-friendly. We find it a bit tricky sometimes to navigate government websites to find the information that we want. So if you were to use the cite double dot and then put in the government ID, website domain, and then put in your keyword, and then you'll be able to find all results from that particular government website. And we all know that government websites in every country have its own unique way of naming. So for example, in Malaysia is gov.my, in Singapore is gov.sg, in Indonesia is go.id. So these are the few examples, right? So then you just need to figure out in your home country what is the government domain that is used, and then you can then use that. And that makes your life much easier when you can search for information faster. So in this example, we just say that, okay, we are searching for the word search, and we are gonna get all results from this olsenessentials.com website. Now, using a top-level domain instead of a site address will also return results from all sites using that particular domain. In this case, this is what I was talking about when you're looking for a top-level domain, meaning government websites. So, and because we know that non-government websites are not allowed to be using this particular type of URL. And we can also search for documents by using the file type double dot search operator. So for example, we could look for Excel sheets, we could look for docs, we could look for PDFs, we could look for PPTs. So just remember that their file types can also vary. We need to put in maybe we thought that we put in doc, it's enough, but there's also docx, PPT, there's also PPTX, XLS, there's also XLSX. And in this case, I realized that a lot of in Asia, a lot of entities like to use PDF as their preferred choice. I'm not quite sure why, but it is a thing. But of course, if you find that you don't see much results in the XLS or XLSX, then you could try, say, PDF or PPT. So then you can also search for a specific phrase in that specific format by using the quotation marks. So for example, it's very, this is the habitual thing that we like to do. We just search for information. We just look for COVID vaccine research, and that's it, right? So we could then make our search results, fine-tune our search results by using the quotation mark, so that we put in a quotation mark to COVID vaccine research, meaning we will only get results in this particular order, in the phrase COVID vaccine research, and in this particular order. So it's not jumbled up, I don't want these three words to be split apart from each other. They are together and they come together in this phrase. So then you can then combine different search operators and use them together. They don't have to be used individually. So you can use all of them together. And so then it would help you to narrow down your searches even better. So instead of getting several 100,000 results or even more than 1 million results, we can narrow down. Sometimes I realize at times I have found myself narrowing down to less than 10 results, which makes it great when I'm trying to look for information. And of course, there's also advanced search page itself. Google has that. And here, the point here is that you can use this page to learn what are the operators out there, but you can also memorize, like I mentioned just now, the most useful search operators, or you can simply then just type them yourself in Google search instead of coming back to the advanced page all the time. But the advanced page does have its good use as well. So this is how you get to the advanced search page, by going on the Google landing page, and then you click on settings, and then you go to advanced search. Okay, so then you realize that you can find that your search can also have varying results. In this case, this COVID 5G search was done in with the ISP, internet service provider, was based in Europe. So therefore, you would get basically in the Great Britain. So you would get European content, or in this case UK content. So then therefore you don't. If you're using a tool or VPN to hide your internet service provider, this is probably what you might be able to see. So then what we can do is that we can actually change the settings by clicking on settings, and then we go back to advanced search, and then we could search our set our region settings. So if we can then narrow down to only wanting results from a certain country. So it just say I were to only look for results from the Philippines, I can just select Philippines and now only get results from Philippines. So I think this is one of the advantage of the advanced search page, dedicated page. So this, then you can see I have selected a country. You can clearly see that the results are very different from what you see earlier. And so I think it doesn't take that difficult of a guess to basically take a try at guessing which country this is. It's quite obvious from the language here. It's in Indonesia. So, okay, so different search engines, of course, can return different results. And so therefore, we always recommend that, maybe if you think that, you don't want to just rely on Google alone, you could try then also different search engines. And there are alternatives such as Bing, DuckDuckGo, Carrot, and Million Short. These are just some of the examples out there. And for Bing, they also have search operators, and their search operators can be quite similar to Google's search operators, but there are some operators that differ somewhat. So Microsoft actually has a reference page explaining what each operator does. And some of these search operators using Bing, of course, like I mentioned, is different from Google. And so then we would tell you that, it's best that you just download this, go to this link so that we can then, you can then just have a list of the entire search operators for Bing. You should see in the comment section now. So one example that we want to show of how one of Bing search operators that can be quite helpful that is not available in Google is this operator called contains double dot. So contains double dot, it shows pages with links to the file type specified. So this is different from the file type double dot feature that we mentioned earlier in Google. And so what it does is that, okay, file type double dot will only show you results of, files being hosted on the domain specified, right? But if the file is hosted on a different domain, but linked to this specified domain, I know it sounds complicated, contains will find it for you. Now, we'll just show you how it works, right? So site double dot, in this case, we're looking at the health ministry in the UK, and we put there contains double dot PDF. Now, we managed to get a result. One of the results we got was this link to this page on vaccine safety, which is on the US government's health and services, human services domain, and links to a fact sheet PDF. So, okay, then you can see that opening the PDF shows that it's actually hosted on the CDC and not on the HHS. So what we were initially searching for was on site.hhs.gov, but then we managed to get a PDF link that goes to the CDC site. So this is the feature that Bing has, which Google does not have. And then Yahoo operators are also the same as Bing because they are built on the same architecture. So it provides an easy to understand input page, but the output page doesn't show the structure of the resulting query. So however, if you are good at manipulating URLs, you can seek out the relevant term and just change the document that you're looking for from, say, a PDF to a doc. So you can see here, you just need to play around the URL. So here is a PDF. You can just change it to doc and then see what results you get. Now, next is Twitter. So Twitter has an advanced search page, but it is not easy to find because when you click around on your Twitter account, you realize that there is no tab that says advanced search. So how do you get to the advanced search page? What you're going to do is that you need to type anything on the search bar. Okay, it can be just one alphabet, and then hit enter. And once you hit enter, then you see these three little double dots. You could either click on three little double dots, or you would see this advanced search available on the right corner. But you could also go straight to the URL and bookmark it. So I also bookmark the URL to make my life easier so that I can go back to it anytime. And this is the page. I put it on comments. And I find that the Twitter advanced search function is pretty helpful to narrow down by language, by hashtag, by keywords. Of course, the keywords also work similarly to Google's. And you can narrow down by language. You can even narrow down by the number of retweets that they get, that particular tweet gets. So I think this also helps to determine the virality of a certain content that you're trying to fact check. So in this case, you can have a look here, two words that you want to appear in any tweets found, and then you could then, put in a negative search term. Instead of using minus, you can put under the none of these keywords. And then so that the word terror would not appear in the result, but you want tweets with the word explosion and balongan. So then when you click on hit enter, and you can see that the structure of the query, it's quite similar to Google's, whereby you just need to use the minus sign to omit things that you don't want in your search results. And so then you could then just, once you start to notice a pattern, then you don't have to keep going back to the advanced search page in order to look for what you want, right? You could just play around in this search bar on Twitter and then just hit search. There is also another tool called TweetDeck. It's free and it's very, very helpful. And for you to monitor content, as a fact checker, it's important to monitor content on Twitter. So you can have a whole series of searches happening on different tabs, right? And so these different columns, which is amazing as opposed to just scrolling through everything on your Twitter account. So this is a typical column, how it looks like. And then you can hit on this little button on top right. It's a filter, and it lets you customize your column. So then you can then see this different things that you can play around with. So there are several filters below, and then so you can just play around. Okay, tweet content. You can select what type of tweet, if you only want images, videos, or broadcasts, or any media. And then you can also exclude things, and you can also determine from who and to who, and written in what language, and if retweets are included, or by location, engagement, all of that. Now, Facebook generally needs to be treated a little bit differently, as constant changes and updates on a platform mean the platform is often not amenable to usual search techniques. So what we're going to look at is that, okay, there was at one point, I think it was about, say, now it's 2021, about like, say, 2.5 to 3 years ago, we had external third-party tools that search Facebook really well, which a lot of fact checkers were using. But then a lot of these tools have been rendered ineffective after Facebook made update to the app. And so then you could see that this third-party tools were no longer working. But the great news to that is that Facebook has, over the last 2 to 3 years, improved its native search function. And it is better than what it was before. Of course, there's still limitations, but we'll take it. Better at something, still better than nothing. So now what we see is that if you search on Facebook, you just search on the Facebook tab, and then you could see that you would be able to have these filters that are available to you. All posts, people, photos, videos, marketplace, whatever, pages, right? And then you can actually then just select one. Say, for example, if I'm looking for posts, I'm looking for people. Then one of the key things is that you can choose by location and also by the timeline. The timeline, however, is only by year. So it's not down to date and month. So then, yeah, you can even see by tag location. And then you could see, and under videos, you can see that it appears in chronological order. So you can sort it. And you can also play around with, yes, this is the one. So you can search within a Facebook account. So this, within someone's Facebook account, you go to their profile, open their profile, and you see this lens, detective lens here, and you just have to click on it. and then well, if you don't see it, then you have to click on these 3 little dots, and then after that, click on search profile. So it's either or, there's 2 options. But it is very, very handy to find for content within a user's account page or within a, say, a community page or a group page. So yeah, like I mentioned, the only problem with this native Facebook search is that it doesn't narrow down by month and date. It only goes down to year, which makes it a bit tricky for fact checkers, because what if we were to look for certain content and we can't be sifting through from January to December, right, for say last year? So then we'll probably look at at one external party tool, which is called Who Posted What. So whopostedwhat.com, it does have its merits. I will post a link here. The merit of that is that it can help you narrow down by a timeline. You can actually specify your date and by month and date. So that helps for you to then get results within a specific time range. But you have to be aware that results from Who Posted What can sometimes be rather incomplete and inconsistent. The date search is an improvement to Facebook's native search, but it is not a perfect tool. So how it works is that when you go to whopostedwhat.com, you can actually search by, you can look at specific day, specific month, specific year. So in this case, we can look at specific month, and we can even select a particular date. And the type of results, right, it's not limited to just posts. You can then change it to view video or even view photos. So how you do that is by playing with the URL. So if you look at the URL on top, okay, let me just go back to here. Earlier on, it says post. If I were to just change the word post to videos, then I'll only get video results. And so this is a handy tip when you're using Who Posted What, obviously, because Who Posted What would let you search posts. So then it will redirect. It has to be connected to your Facebook account. It will redirect to Facebook, and it will show you results that look something like this. Look something like this. But I don't want posts. If I only want to look, so say photos or videos, then I would just have to change the URL on top here from posts to videos, and then I'll get videos. I can also change this word videos to photos, and then I'll only get photos. So this means that you do not have to keep going back to whopostedwhat.com, and you can just play around on Facebook itself to get the results that you want. Now, sometimes you got to remember that if you can't find something, well, don't just say that, oh, I've checked it, I don't find it, so it does not exist. Then you got to be very careful as a fact checker how you rephrase your wording, and you just kind of have to say that, okay, I'm unable to find evidence of its existence. So not being able to find information or content online doesn't mean it's not there. So you just got to bear this in mind. Okay, so remember the other thing that you need to know is that you need to target your searches better. Maybe you want to target a particular platform search, but you realize that you're having all these hindrances. So then like we mentioned just now, Who Posted What can be pretty handy to find information. So you got to be creative. If you can't find something on the internet, think of what other ways that you can come up with in order to find the information that you want. So I want to just give this a short practice for you guys to just have play around with it. Perhaps you could use Google search operators to find a presentation mentioning COVID on a Philippines government website. And you could also try using the second task is to use TWX Explorer to find out what is currently being mentioned on Twitter in connection to the Me Too movement. And third little exercise is find mentions of AstraZeneca on Facebook that occurred on April 21st, 2021. So if I hope you have questions. If you do, I will probably take them now. And as usual, if you want the tip sheet to the content that we're covering from our workshops, you would need to fill in the feedback form. So this is the URL for the feedback form. Let's get this to you. So once you key in your feedback, then after that you get a link to the tip sheet at the end of the feedback form. Okay, so we have one question here from Hyun Wong. How often do journalists refer to, I'll just put it up. How often do journalists refer to search engines other than Google? Aside from more diverse operator functions, is there any merit to use Bing or Yahoo over Google? Well, from my personal experience when I was on the field doing my work was that I use mainly Google simply because Google has, like I mentioned, Google has a wider database. And it does give most of the results I want. We still recommend using other search engines like Bing or Yahoo if in the event that you cannot find what you want on Google. So say, for example, you've tried different keywords, different keywords to use with the search operators on Google, and you're still unable to find the information that you want. And you just want to give it a go on Yahoo or Bing to see if any results pop up. So you never know, right? Perhaps it was not indexed on Google, or perhaps it was indexed differently on Google, and it did not appear on Google when using your keywords, but it may appear on other search engines. I hope that answers your question. Is there any other questions from the audience? So the other thing is that if you're watching the recording of this session, which I believe most people do because they want to do it at their own time and pace, that's fine. So if you're watching the recorded session and you missed the live session of this workshop, but you have questions that you want to ask, and obviously since it's not live anymore, you're watching the recording, you're unable to ask them. So what do? You can actually join the clinic hour. If you join the clinic hour, we'll be able to answer whatever questions that you have during the 1 hour session with us. We have 2 dates available, so you can select whichever is convenient to you. Or perhaps you're watching the live session right now, but you realize that later on after the session is over, you have questions that you want to ask that you didn't get to ask right now, but you want to join the clinic hour to ask them. You can also do that. Now, I'm also available at this email address. If you have any questions at all, you can email me about the workshop. But if you have questions with regards to the logistics, like you're not getting the YouTube link to this, or you're not getting the calendar reminder, because if you subscribe to our Google Calendar, you're supposed to get a reminder half an hour before the workshop starts. So you can email our organizer at this email address. We have another 9 minutes, so I can still take another 2 or 3 more questions. And I will also bring up Owen to the stream. Owen, anything that I missed, you can just reiterate them and cover them right now.
Sure, thanks, Trini. You can hear me okay? Sorry, you're taking some coffee there. Yeah. No, you covered pretty much everything there. Just a couple of things I'd like to emphasize if we're waiting for questions here and we have a little time. Right back to the solutions for the quiz from the previous session, a couple of things that I wanted to emphasize in setting those was that if you look at those fake stories, the LeBron James, the space station, Kim Kardashian, apart from the Kim Kardashian one, which was completely true, the LeBron James one was based on a real story that he's actually becoming a major shareholder in the Boston Red Sox. So if you were to look quickly, you might think, okay, this is true. Similarly, with the tweet from the International Space Station, if you've been watching news from the United States or if you've been watching science-related news, you will see that there has been a lot of talk recently about UFOs and declassification of materials. So you may have been inclined to think, oh, this is part of that whole information dump or whatever. So the point there being that what you do know can mislead you just as easily as what you don't know. Seeing something that looks familiar sometimes makes you drop your defenses a little bit. So you have to be very careful of that effect happening. Sometimes you'll see something, oh yeah, that I've seen that. That's probably true. But watch out, because this is a tactic used by people spreading disinformation also. They will give you something with a little bit of truth in it to kind of disarm you just a little bit. So be very aware and be very careful about that kind of thing. Then another couple of things that I think deserve another little bit of emphasis. You brought up a couple of times about manipulating URLs. This is a very handy skill to have. It's not always important to be able to do it, but it can be a great time saver. I worked for years in a news agency where we did this stuff very intensively, and we did a lot of these kind of searches every day. And rather than having to go back to Twitter Advanced Search or Google Advanced Search, being able to just look at a URL, picking the relevant part and altering that and hitting enter saved you so much time over a day or a week or a month. So it's a really useful thing to be able to do. That's pretty much it. Also, just not to be dependent on any of these tools, whether they're third-party or native tools. Always remember that, as you said at the end there, just because you can't find something does not mean it's not out there. And you can be open with your audience, with your readers or viewers about this. An agency I worked for, one of the things I always tried to explain to new people coming in was, we don't have to know everything. And our clients in other media did not expect us to know everything. But what was important, that we allowed them to know what we know. So we had to tell them, this is what we know. This is what we don't know. This is why we don't know it. And this is what we are doing to try to get to know it. So as long as you are transparent and clear about things, you aren't expected to know 100% of everything. You just need to do the job to the best of your ability, and then be transparent with your audience or your clients or whoever about what it is you know and you don't know.
Okay, so it looks like we don't have any more questions. So what I'm gonna do is that if we don't have any more questions, then I suggest that we end the session right now. So just remember that you need to fill in the feedback form to get the tip sheet. And if you're interested in signing up for the clinic hour, then please do so. We do have a deadline to register for the clinic hour. I know it's a month away, but yes, the registration deadline is a month away. So okay, if that's all there is, then we'll end the session for today. Remember, our next session is on Wednesday, also at 6 p.m. Hong Kong time. So we'll have the next session on, sorry, I'm just trying to find out what's the next session again. Hang on, let me just pull it out. The next session is, I'm just trying to remember what's the title on the next session. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, because I'm presenting the next one. The next one is source analysis, Trina.
Yes, source analysis. So remember to join us on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Hong Kong time for source analysis. And our last two workshops will be next week, Monday and Wednesday, again, 6 p.m. Hong Kong time. And it will be on where and when. And lastly is on ethics of online investigation, which I think is incredibly useful and a good reminder for most of us journalists, because we tend to just rip off content without having much ethics. So we need to bear that in mind. Okay, with that, I will end today's broadcast. Thank you everyone for joining. And if you're watching this session recorded, then I hope you have a good evening or a good day wherever you are. And do join us for the clinic hour then. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.